You're tuned in to Around the Lens, the internet's only live streaming roundtable discussion podcast, featuring Zach Roberts, Ron Hamilton, Travis Keys, and your host, David J. Murphy. Hello and welcome to Around the Lens, episode 182. I'm your host, David J. Murphy. Joining me as always are my co-hosts, Zach Roberts. Hello, Zach.
Hello. I am plural today.
You are plural.
Zach Roberts is.
You're so many hosts that you're more than you're the hostess.
I like your. I saw your eye shift and you're like, oh, host, like in your head.
Well, you know,
yeah.
Ron and Travis are here in spirit. You know,
yes.
I can feel them. Yes. I can feel their presence around me at all times.
That's a little creepy. I'm doing fine. I'm completely and utterly exhausted. I was in Washington, D.C. for the last 4 days covering what was supposed to be Trump's extravaganza of patriotism on the 4th of July, and turned into I never got anywhere near that, and just covered a white nationalist or a nationalistic Western chauvinist group called the Proud Boys, basically for three of those days. Just followed them basically around town and covered their shenanigans, often involved in violence. But the bigger thing is that it was 98 degrees with like 400% humidity.
Wow.
So I got sunstroke the first day, and every day after that it was like, ugh. Yeah, no, I haven't been that bad for a very long time. Like hands shaking, basically trying to yeah, exactly. Yeah. I went to a McDonald's after later in the day. I walk up and put my hands on the counter because I was tired. And the two women behind the counter go, "Are you okay? Do you need water?" And I'm like,
"Do you need cheeseburgers?"
I mean, it's bad when the two people at McDonald's, the clerks at McDonald's are deeply concerned. I could see their concern. It wasn't just "Are you okay?" It was "Oh my God, he doesn't look good."
Wow. It's like, "Sir, drink this Diet Coke, quick."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh
wow.
My Lord.
So This was in DC. You were doing this?
Yes, all around DC, mostly around the White House, things like that. Then picked up a random. Yeah, covered another random protest about the Uyghur camps in Western China and everything, which is super weird. That just randomly was happening, and then the crew that I was with Subverse. We just was like, do we want to cover this instead of the bunch of the MAGA rally people going to pick up trash? Yeah, this sounds good. Let's go cover that.
Nice.
And it was that's not really a news story. So yeah, let's go.
Well, glad to have you back, and glad to see you all in one piece and all hopefully alive and well, and hopefully the better for it. We've got an awesome guest on this evening or morning, I guess, depending on where you're calling from. Mr. Mark Doyle. Mark, we've had you on in the past, but for those of us, those who weren't listening to the previous show, can you give folks a little rundown about who you are?
Yeah.
Yes. Hey, how you doing? So I am a live event and music photographer in New York, and shoot for several venues here in the city, in New York City. One is the Hammerstein Ballroom, the other is the King's Theater, and I also shoot for a lot of the park events, the Central Park events here in the city. A lot of you guys know Central Park, and do lots of events for those guys, especially now since everything's outside and the summertime. Lots of live events and music there. So that's pretty much what I've been up to. Mostly that stuff, mostly events.
And we had Travis on your show not too long ago. How did that go?
I did. I actually do a podcast, and Travis was on the show, and he did a really nice job. It was actually interesting, and he's an interesting guy, and definitely has gotten a lot of work. I mean, he's definitely hustled a lot of work, and he's definitely he's definitely meant to do this, and I was impressed with some of the stuff that he's been doing. And I know I think he's off to Italy this week, I think, right, or the week after.
Yeah. The reason he's jet setting around the globe and doing all kinds of jobs right now, and that's the reason he's not here this evening with us. So glad that he could come on your show, and of course Zach, myself, and Ron are all ready to come on when you're ready for us. So just let us know.
Absolutely. We gotta figure out a time to get you guys all on.
That's right.
We'll get you to call in. I guess we get you to call in, right? Because you're a little,
Zach
little
could
hard
actually.
beat.
Zach could, if he could, prevent himself from throwing up constantly, could actually make it down to New York to be on
There
your
is
show.
no doubt.
Good.
I'm sure that I will be in New York City sometime relatively soon. But yeah,
Well,
I
we'll
will.
figure- yeah,
Yeah.
we'll
If
figure
nothing
that
else,
out.
I'll be. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
If nothing else, I got New York Comic-Con coming up in a couple months, so
That's right, October.
I'll definitely be down there.
We'll have
for
to
there.
make a date. We'll have to make a date for that because I've done that show too. So I have to
Yeah.
make a date for that. Dave, you're gonna have to call in, man.
That's right.
Unless you're gonna fly. How long would it take you to fly over here, by the way?
Well, probably about 19 hours, maybe. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe if I flew the other side of the globe, I could get there in like 12, 13 hours. It's a 12-hour flight to San Francisco, so I think it'd probably be, I don't know.
Yeah.
It'd be a while.
Yeah.
If you pay my expenses, Mark, I will definitely fly over there.
When we get that key sponsor, I'll make sure that.
I'm going to need lodging, a per
Working on
diem.
That's right.
Was it,
Working on
what
it.
And
is
my
it? What is
appearance
it?
fee.
It's Squarespace and I'm trying to think of
Audible.
and enlargement pills are usually the two things that and Audible, yeah.
Oh yeah, and Audible, yes, that's right.
And foam mattresses, a lot of Casper and things like that. I
Oh,
hear
yeah.
on podcasts. Yeah.
Nothing like
Yeah.
a good pre-roll before a show, right?
Yeah.
We can only hope to get to the point where we have those type of sponsors.
Anytime. Nikon, maybe we're getting in better because Nikon just sent me this like out of the blue. I don't know. I guess it's talking about the MPS services. They're doing some changes. Sent me this very nice little like luggage tag thing. Access to professional services and it's metal. So I'm just saying to Canon members, I don't have to pay for that. I just have to have Nikon gear. Anyways, sorry.
There you go.
I was just having this conversation with a Canon user about the difference between NPS and CPS. So yeah, just a little fair, just a little ragging. That's all.
So what you're saying is Nikon is practically a sponsor.
Yeah, I don't think I can legally say that.
No,
I think JC Carey would come down and like, baby, Zach, we told you. We
Nikon
legally want nothing to do with you.
No, per the legal settlement, we can't associate ourselves with you, Zach.
There you go.
Previous audio restraining orders, you cannot say that you are associated with Nikon in any way, shape, and form.
That's right. Oh, man. Well, maybe Nikon will make you one of their, like, explorers of light, or where are they calling them? What they're like here?
I think it's Canon. Yeah, I think Canon's explorers of light.
Yeah.
I think Nikon is, what is Nikon? That's a good question. What are they? What's their? I think it's just Nikon. And you know what I think it is? I think it's Nikon Ambassador.
Yeah, Ambassador.
I think
that's right.
It's Explorer. It's Explorer of Light for Canon and Nikon Ambassador for Nikon. Yeah, that's how that works out.
Nice.
I'm neither, so.
Yeah, I know. I'll.
Haven't gotten there.
Not to feel like I've had a couple conversations with different Nikon people, and it's just like we like your work, but we can never use. We can't use your photos in advertisements.
That's right.
It's just like, yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, protest photography. It's just it's not. Not the biggest
Some
seller.
screaming Nazi.
Yeah. Burning an American flag. I don't know. That's not something you want to highlight. No.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I know Canon uses a lot of nature. They have a lot of nature photographers that tend to be the explorers of light. I mean, that's the stuff I think that they post up a lot more. But I know there are a lot of explorers of light that do weddings and events and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
But I know they definitely favor the nice picture of the walrus and stuff like that for their brochures.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the sort of stuff that really shows off. Like their gear can actually do, can survive that sort of weather. So yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah, and I mean they're in the print game too, so they want to show a lot of their stuff printed, straight from camera to their printers.
Sorry, this is a random thing. I don't know where this came from, but I got this in the mail. Epson sent me a Print Your Legacy catalog, which it's a very nice catalog with different photographers like holding their prints. But on the front cover is Steve McCurry.
Oh my God!
Which, if you're a listener to our show, we bring up Steve McCurry a lot. So I just got this and I started cracking up because it's like,
That's pretty
he can't. He's got to, Yeah. Anyway.
I should create a program for the show, like, if you call around the lens, explorers of ambassadors of light of scenes, I don't know, special program. But let's get into our first topic this evening. We've done it, or whatever, today. We've got a lot of great stuff to talk about this evening. But basically, a district judge in Manhattan has sided with the Andy Warhol Foundation for the visual arts in a fair use case. Basically, renowned photographer Lynn Goldsmith shot a photograph of Prince, which then the Andy Warhol group, Andy Warhol took and created into artwork. And so essentially they're trying to say that the Andy Warhol organization said that this is fair use. And she's saying, no, this is my photograph and you've used it, for this artwork. And essentially, at least the latest in this case is that the photographer is lost in this case. And the judge did determine that the use of this photograph was fair use. So what does that mean for, us as photographers who are trying to create work, and now someone can co-opt our work and take it and use it for art and without having to compensate us? I mean, that's a scary ground to be in, especially if you're a freelancer. And I'll throw it over to you, Mark, because you said, you have, a little bit more information than we do about this. So what are your thoughts on this particular story, and what do you know about what's going on in the behind the scenes?
Yeah, I mean, I know that this has been going on for a while, and having had her attorney on my podcast, we were chatting a little bit about it. He couldn't really get into specifics because it was still an ongoing case when I had him on the show. It's a slippery slope. I mean, this is something that's been going on, and I think will continue to go on, in a lot of these circles. And it's a tricky thing to have to deal with. But in talking with this attorney, I know that there's a lot of other attorneys, copyright attorneys, that have, hundreds, if not thousands of cases, in the courts right now for all various reasons of copyright infringement, and stuff that's, more evident. I personally think that that the ruling was wrong. I think she should have been compensated for it. I think it's way too close to the actual photo. And if you're repurposing a photo for artistic reasons, and it's far removed from the actual the photo, I think that that's a legitimate case. But I don't think this is the case. I've also, I've talked with other artists, and I've seen other artists, and I actually was talking with an artist that had sent me some postcards that she of her art, and was based on a lot of original photos, like shots of, say, I think there was shots of like James Dean, and she had done recreated art off of these photos, but it was very, very far removed from the actual photo, where she would using different kind of techniques, spray paint techniques and painting and all kinds of different kind of, really making it something that was original and something, far removed from the original photo. But this is really not the case. And I think that there was a lot going on behind the scenes on this. And, I do feel bad for Lynn, and she's definitely, trying to stand up for a lot of the photographers that are out there, because she's pointing out, I think it goes beyond the principle of money. I'm sure she was looking for, obviously looking for some financial, compensation for this because of the way everything went down. But I think she's also now at this point really starting to try and be very proactive to point it out to people, to point it out to other photographers that, hey, this is a real problem. This is me, but this could be you, and this is a real problem, and we need to get behind this, this cause, because it can happen to really anyone, and you could be spending a lot of money and a lot of time in court.
Yeah. So it's very interesting because I don't think that the Petapixel delves into as much, but they link to a New York Times. I think it's actually, is it AP? Yeah, it's an AP story. And the behind is actually makes it even more complicated. Says in 1984, Vanity Fair licensed one of Miss Goldsmith's black and white studio portraits of Prince from her. December 1981 shoot for $400 and commissioned Warhol to create an illustration. So I'm curious. I'd be curious on why, or if she's gone through anything with Vanity Fair, and whether or not whether I guess it would be actually Andy Warhol at the time, not the Warhol Foundation, because he still was alive, but would actually have known, because this is something I'm learning about, is that if somebody hires you basically to take photos and then gives those photos to somebody else, but that wasn't part of an agreement, or they're not buying the copyright from you,
right?
But they still use it. You sue the people who end up using it anyway, because they didn't know, they basically not knowing that the image that person wasn't able to give the copyright over doesn't matter. I actually had that happen with one of my copyright cases. It ended up being like this big roundabout thing, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. The publishing house was supposed to have made sure that the person had the copyright, and so I'm very curious in the background on that, whether or not Vanity Fair actually ever said that, by the way, we didn't get the copyright for you, or that you don't have to do it. But let's see, was it Andy Warhol and contained a copyright attribution credit for the portrait that cited a source photograph by Goldsmith. So no one could possibly deny that it was based on their work.
Right.
And so that's even scarier, because we were talking beforehand. We were talking about the Shepard Fairey case with the Obama photo, or the Obama,
right? The whole photo, yeah.
That was based on it was AP, right? It was AP photographer, I think.
I believe it was a wire. Yeah, it was wire.
The wire, yeah. But he denied for ages. It felt like the case went on for ages, at least. He denied for quite a bit that it was he either said it was an amalgamation of other photos, or no, it wasn't based on that photo. And then eventually it came out in either emails or text or something like that Shepard admitted that it was based on that one particular photo, which anyone with two eyes could have seen that it was based on that one photo. It was a very particular angle, and the way that Obama's eyes were looking was the same, and that sort of thing. I mean, just like this, where you can look at, you don't even have to look at, his eyes and his shadowing. You can see the hair. Mm-hmm. And, that's, to me, that's the thing. If the hair is exactly the same way, the little coif that's like right above his left eye, the top of his hair is exactly the same way it's in the photo. That's the photo that he used. And, this is not, to me, I don't know. I've never been a fan of Andy Warhol's work, especially once it turned into The Factory. And he wasn't even doing the work. He was just being like, yeah, go ahead and do that, and I'll take my name and cash the check.
I don't think, but just to jump in real quick, I don't think that was the issue. I think, I don't think that they're disputing the fact that this was not her photo. Mm-hmm. I think they're disputing the fact that, how far removed is it where it becomes original work. Yeah. Okay, so the fact that the judge, who's obviously not an artist, is, and the case is being made back and forth, right? Because you have two sides here on this thing. The fact that they're saying, well, the Warhol side saying, no, this is basically a new work. It has become a new work in which we can now turn around and sell that new work. Yeah. So, like I said before, it's a very slippery slope when it comes to this stuff. But she should have. The original copyright is Lynn's, and she deserved some sort of, retribution on this, because without the original photo that Lynn took, there is no Andy Warhol art.
Right. Yeah.
It's just that simple.
And that's the crux of the issue.
How do you make that determination? You know what I'm saying?
That's the crux of the issue.
Really what the issue is.
Yeah, you get right to the point.
That's really what
for those, who may not have experience with this, or, might be learning the craft, you are, the owner of your image, and you are also the owner of every single way in which that image can be used, because each way that image is used is a different licensing fee. And you find this out if you try and get some photo from the AP, right? They're going to ask you exactly how you are going to use that image. Are you going to use that image on a website? Are you going to use that image in a magazine? Are you going to use that image, on a book or whatever? And each instance of that image use requires its own contract and requires its own rights and whatnot. So really, Vanity Fair was not in the right to allow this image to be used in something other than if they license it for use as publication as the image in their magazine, that's one use case. And if they wanted to use it for an artwork, that would have been something that the artist and the photographer should have worked out, which they didn't. And so I almost feel a little bit bad for the Andy Warhol Foundation, because if Vanity Fair said, "Hey, here's this image, make artwork out of it. We paid for the license for it. Don't worry about it." It's almost like it's Vanity Fair who made the mistake in not properly licensing or not properly connecting the way that we work this, or not being transparent with the artist, with the photographer. And just sort of creating this really messed up situation now where, again, the artist had to take, the Andy Warhol Foundation to court. And I don't know if it mentioned in the article, and if either of you read this, but I mean, this was in 1984, right? This artwork was created, and it's 28 and 19. Do you know why the huge jump in time between, the creation of this artwork and the actual case? Like, did Lynn Goldsmith wake up one day and was like, you know what? I feel like suing today. Was there...
I mean, I don't really know. I mean, it's quite possible that after a while, maybe there was conversations through the chain of artists in this area in New York. And, maybe, someone's got to speak up. I think she became sort of the voice of it, and maybe it'll bring out other people to speak up. But I'm not really sure how that, came about or when.
I'm rereading the article, and it says that the Andy Warhol Foundation sued her first.
That was originally, the original. That's exactly right. Originally, she was sued by them. Now, I don't know if that was a preemptive strike or something.
That's what they say in this article, preemptive strike.
I always think that especially when it's not part of a larger grouping, like if it was like a dozen different people or something, a dozen different artists, like bringing things together, the fact that this is just one photo and clearly clearly and admittedly it's her photo. But I always think that then the photographer should be able to use the art in any way, shape, and form that they want. Sure, yeah. I'd be like, okay, cool, yeah, or go the Richard Prince way, and I'll just take a photo of Andy Warhol's work and sell prints of it because whatever. What do we have to do? I'll throw it in Lightroom for 10 seconds. Sorry. Sorry.
So she can actually take this. She could actually take this and make a derivative work from her own work that was stolen by people. Yeah. But,
that's the difference, is that it's Andy Warhol and he gets, basically get away with it. What I find, though, and I don't know what the answer is to this, but what I always find worrying with a lot of these things is that judges are kind of the fact that so often the judges are ruling in a less than informed way on a lot of different cases when it comes to copyright and things like that. Like we had a previous one previous case where we talked about where copyright infringement and a park or a town or something like that just grabbed a guy's photo of a beachfront or a cityscape and used it as their own, and the judge was like, "Oh yeah, no, it's fine because you posted it online. It's out there." And the judges don't understand. They don't have enough. They're not informed enough about precedent or what the copyright laws are, they have the kind of the general idea that a lot of people do. Most Americans, I think, unfortunately, think that if a photo's on the internet, it's free. It's free to use. And things like that. Like I always have this problem because my mom does. My mom does events, and so every once in a while she'll put together a book or something like that of like the photos from the events, and she'll just go through different people's Facebook pages and grab them. And like I help her put together the book, usually because she doesn't, she's not that great at graphic design or anything. And I'm just like, do you get at least an okay from these people? She's like, oh yeah, no, it'll be fine. I'm like, no. I know you're only doing like 5 copies of this, but I'm like.
Yeah.
I just it hurts me to do it. I know nothing's going to come out of it. No one's going to do anything, but it hurts me to do this.
Well, I think it's the worst when I see a YouTube video or somebody even in their presentation, like they're a professional person, right? Who's giving a professional presentation via PowerPoint to like a group. And I see that they're taking photos, they're taking off Shutterstock, and these other sort of services, and they have the branding like all over the photograph. I'm like, really? You're a professional who's running a professional organization. You can't pay even the few dollars that it costs to license that one image, at least for your presentation. Wow, that's...
Well, let me tell you
sad.
just a real quick story with regards to one of the wire services. I won't mention which one. So I was talking with a friend of mine who his wife was friends with this woman who was an executive for this wire service, very big, well-known wire service. And they were together and having dinner one night, so they ordered food from this local Greek restaurant not too far from where I am. And the phone number came up on the restaurant, the caller ID came up, and it said this particular wire service because she was using her corporate phone to call. So the restaurant owner got on the phone and said, hi, do you work for so X company? And this woman said, as a matter of fact, I do work for this company. And he goes, wow, I'm glad to have you on the phone because we used an image in our menu, and their attorneys have been calling me, threatening me to sue because we used one of their images from this company in their menu. So these wire services have teams of lawyers canvassing the country, canvassing the internet for all different kinds of copyright infringement issues that are going on. And there's millions of them. On
a sort of side thing, when I was in high school, we would do musicals, right? I was in theater, right? And so they had, if you tried to use like Grease or some other musical and play it at your high school, like doesn't matter if you're in little town like I was, these companies know you're doing it, and if you try and do it, without letting them know and paying the rights for it, they're gonna find out and they're gonna just bring the hammer down on you. So I'd be very careful not to do anything without paying for the rights, and even filming. Like there was only like one show you could do the pre-show, the dress rehearsal. You could film that, and otherwise you can't film any other shows. So they were very protective of their intellectual property.
That's why Shakespeare is pervasive.
That's right. Shakespeare and also
no one actually likes Shakespeare, but but it is pervasive because it is public domain.
That's right.
Right.
And you can mix and match it. We did a neo-classical post-apocalyptic Shakespeare play one time for one of the plays I did. It was fun. Excuse me. All right.
That's actually why I find the story behind the Aliens musical. Have you seen any of this? Really
is that the one with the kids? The
kids did it. The kids put together.
That was amazing. Yeah, it was so great. I love that.
Yeah. What's her name? Oh my God. The main character. I'm blanking on.
Sigourney Weaver.
Sigourney Weaver showed up to their last showing of it and everything.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, that they just let it.
She did a video first. She did a video first to congratulate them on how good it was.
Yeah, it was really. I mean, I've seen clips of it. It's just really good. Yeah. But also, I guess the director was just like, "Yeah, go for it. That sounds fun." No, it was just not that complicated. Once you get, that's always it's. We've had issues where Willie Nelson will say, "Oh yeah, no problem. You can use the music," and then we go through the process, and it's like, "Oh wait, no. Not only does he not own the rights to the music." In that way that he can't he can't just go ahead and do that, but so it's just because we have a lot of musicians that have okayed music for use in documentaries that I've worked on,
right?
And then it's just oh god, Moby back in the day did it, gave us his first, all the stuff that was used in the Born Identity and stuff like that. Right. He's like, yeah, you can go ahead and do that, and it was just at a party sort of thing, and then one of my colleagues had to go through the a multi-week process of actually getting the actual okay to use it in a thing other than just Moby or whoever else going, yeah, it sounds good. Go ahead and do it. That's cool.
Yeah. Music rights are just a minefield, and you don't want to get into that. But for instance, most artists don't even own their own masters. I think Taylor Swift was in the news recently because the company that owns all her masters from her first 10 albums or something, and there's that controversy there because she doesn't want them to own it. But it's artists have, it's kind of scary how little power they have over their own music, but thankfully we as photographers have all the power over our own photos. But if we get paid for them, right? Zach, I want to throw back to you because this is a topic that Ron brought up to me, and I was really hoping he'd be on his show to talk about it. And you can kind of, obviously, you're the best source to kind of answer this, question. But there was some news, about protesters and protest photographers and the journalists who cover protests. And, someone who covers that a lot, basically brought up the concept, would we consider protest photographers war photographers, so to speak? And the idea being like, hey, they're in a conflict area. Some of them, suffer PTSD from the experiences they have or been through. Obviously, you're not in a combat zone. You're not in Afghanistan or, some other country that's war-torn. You're here usually in America covering, but obviously you're putting your life in danger. You've talked about the fact that you have to wear body armor and helmets and gloves and stuff like that. So, let me throw it over to you. What do you think of the kind of idea that we treat a protest photographer as a war photographer?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that the term war photographer is kind of a general public term. I don't think I've ever really heard outside of like guys from the World War II, era or Korea or something like that, like referred to as war photographers. It's usually more conflict. Because, again, you're not covering, even war, quote unquote, war photographers aren't covering war as much in the way that, Kappa and things like that, very few photographers are jumping off the boat as they, charge, not because that's just not the way war is now. But, I joke around that I never thought I'd become a domestic conflict photographer. Which is, I think, a little bit more of what I wouldn't in a million years compare what I do to the guy, Tyler Hicks and things like, guys like that are physically, bullets are flying by and that sort of thing. Very rarely in America do you have that sort of thing. And so I would rather have a different term. Than that. I'm not, just because it's kind of like there's different levels, I mean, I don't know if I'm ready to go. Even though I've experienced some of the worst stuff out there, I don't think I'm ready personally to, or I mean, I'm probably could be with the more training, if do risk training and things like that. But I mean, I don't think that I think that there's a big enough difference that it at least demands a different term than just a war or conflict photographer, the way that people covering Afghanistan or Iraq or Syria or whatever are doing. I mean, like, there is no, I have a helmet, I have a bulletproof vest, I have things like that, but I mean, it's not, I stupidly, I left all that stuff at home, when I went down to DC.
Yeah.
And I wasn't that worried. I wasn't that worried about it, especially my vest. And I do wish that I had brought, my I have a lighter weight helmet. It's kind of like a bike helmet sort of thing. I wish I had brought that, but the vest, I don't think, but if I were going to Afghanistan or, wherever, I'd be freaking the hell out if I didn't bring that stuff. So yeah, long-winded way of answering is I would definitely say, I mean, I think that it's a term, it's something that requires a different term. It's not a war photographer in that way. So yeah.
Okay, so let's take that term out of play, right? Let's say conflict photographer. Yeah. Would you consider yourself a conflict photographer or a protest photographer? Or how would you...
I mean, I've never really liked the term protest photographer. It's like I usually just kind of like turn it around and be like, I cover activism on both sides. Even though I don't even like saying on both sides, but people are politically minded, it's just like left on the left and right. I cover activism. So it's I think that maybe even I'm a little bit uncomfortable of using I use the term domestic or U.S. based conflict photographer or something like that.
Right.
I use it kind of with with a wink, kind of a joking, like a lighthearted way, because 20 years ago, like I covered, I was covering stuff not 20 years ago, but yeah, 20 years ago. I'm old. But 20 years ago, coming, protests around the Bush administration, they were pretty rough. But I mean, I don't think that they were rough in the way that they are now. And they weren't as random as it is now with the violence. And so
yeah,
I think that we're getting closer and closer to being able to have like conflict photographers that work in this country. But I still kind of, like I said, I still kind of use the term, U.S. based conflict photographer as a kind of a like a stressed out haha.
Well, you bring up a good point, because obviously a U.S. protest is much different than a protest in another country.
I mean, even France. I mean, I have a bunch of colleagues who just came back from France covering the Yellow Vest protest, and they're like, Jesus, the protesters are different. I mean, if I think about if Antifa, whatever you want to have your understanding of what that is, showed up in the streets of DC and started building barricades and throwing throwing bottles and throwing Molotov cocktails and things like that, the freaking cops would come down, and I think people would end up dead, and B, like, our protesters are not like European protesters, and also the police don't respond in the same way, and in my general thing is the Europe is considerably more outraged when police do commit violence against activists or protesters in the street. I mean, I remember during the London riots / protests / whatever, there were some incidents where, a cop hit I think it was an older woman or something like that. And like the British press freaked the hell out. That happens on a regular basis here in the United States, and no one gives a damn. The social media world does, but like the modern press doesn't give a damn, like, other than CNN freaking out, Jake Tapper freaking out about, conservative columnists, Andy No getting hit by a fake cement milkshake. But there was no cement. I'm just saying. I'm joking, by the way. So, but yeah, anyway.
So you photographed, obviously, the protests in D.C. That was over the 4th of July weekend, so that's what you did. Your 4th of July weekend, right? Okay.
Yes.
But yeah, again, talking about the differences in different countries, I'd say it's I've covered protests in America, and again, they can range from a bunch of old people getting around and talking about, shouting at clouds to, again, full on, people getting hit by cars and, obviously the worst stuff you photographed in Charlottesville. So, it can range. And at the end of the day, you can usually go back to your house or your apartment or your whatever, and you're relatively safe. And, it's not like you're in a war-torn country or a place with, lower socioeconomic, outcome where, you could get killed on your way back to hopefully your hotel or wherever you're staying at. So it's definitely a far different thing. So you wouldn't correlate the two.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing that I think to think of is one person died at Charlottesville. Many, many, many other people could have died and very close to dying. And, everyone from DeAndre Harris. I mean, like, there were dozens and dozens of injuries. So I don't want to lessen the thing. Yeah. But look at the country's reaction to that. And the fact that we freaked the hell out about it justifiably. Yep. And it wasn't done by, it wasn't done by the police. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can look at it. But I mean, like, so the fact, if you're in a conflict zone, if one person was shot, one person was run over or something like that, it's still a big deal, obviously, but it's not like the way that it's a national news story on a daily basis. 10,000 people die in Syria every couple weeks. Yeah. It doesn't even make the news. It doesn't even make European news that often, too. So it's not just American news, which is its own problem. So, I mean, we're far away off from being actual genuine conflict photographers. That said, I mean, I think that it would be good to have a conversation where it's something a little bit different. Not only, and I think it's important not to go long on this, but like, that's what I do. But I think it is important though, because one thing that deeply worries me is that I do see, especially after Charlottesville, I see a lot of photographers, photojournalists getting into this without the proper training and diving straight into things that could very quickly be very bad, very violent. And, I think that's honestly a lot of things. It's like Andy Ngo, the conservative editor at Quillette, getting, milkshakes thrown at him and punched and things like that. He was doing very, very stupid things. He did not have situational awareness. He was not, whether or not he deserved to get what he did, it's not a conversation I'm having. It's whether or not he was prepared to actually cover something like that. He was not. I've been in scenarios where I've been one of the hated people in the room, like 'cause when they peg you for somebody they don't like you, whether it be, black bloc or whether it be, white supremacists or whatever. Again, not comparing both of them equally, but just saying like whatever side doesn't like you or whatever group of people doesn't like you. The fact that he was walking amongst them, and he is a well-known right wing commentator who continually attacks and has outed other journalists and more progressive journalists or whatever. He has outed those people and doxed them, and so he damn well should have known that he was going to be a target, and he did not. He was not prepared for that. You go with a group of people. You never, I try desperately never to be alone in a crowd on either side, because you don't know, somebody randomly, you might have had like some argument online with them, and this is their moment. They get to take a swing at you or something like that. And crowd logic works. And so that's the reason why I think that like people really need to be separating this, like when they're showing up to these type of rallies. Like just because you covered, the Women's March doesn't mean that you can easily be like, oh yeah, I covered the Women's March. That was a huge march. I can go and cover, Unite the Right 3 or whatever that's going to happen in Portland. It's just, that's the only reason why I think it's important that we should come up with some sort of term that is some sort of middle step or something like that. So yeah, anyway, super long, but yeah, I think it's important.
Indeed. Very important. But let's close up this episode with a new segment that I'm trying to propagate here. We'll see if it actually, keeps on. But I was looking at this photo story called Mining for Gold in the World's Highest Permanent Settlement. And I actually saw I don't know if it was a documentary or a TV show about this particular story. But again, a beautiful series of photographs, and I'll link to it in the show notes. And I open this discussion up to everyone. Please check out the story and let me know what you think. But just wanted to briefly talk about these photographs and kind of get from me, kind of what we think were the most impactful ones here, because I think it's a very impactful story. I mean, we're talking about a settlement, I think, of, I want to say, I'll get the details wrong here, so I apologize, 30 to 50,000 inhabitants, right?
Yeah.
That's Delano. So no, that's it's La Rinconada. Sorry, it's a place. So these are all people going up here to try and get a gold mine. I believe it's existed for 12 years, but it's basically an illegal town. There's no running water. There's no sewage system. There's no trash even management system. It's just people going up here, mining for gold illegally, and doing all kinds of really horrible stuff to the environment in order to get this gold, like using mercury and vapor, and it's just it's a really tragic situation, and it's what people are trying to do for gold. And throw it over to you, Zach. I mean, a lot of beautiful, impactful photos here. What kind of struck out to you from this set, which was by Kenneth Dickerman and James Whitlow Delano?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things that stands out is that it's something that you don't see that often, which is a solid photo essay. Usually photo essays have become, and I'm guilty of this quite a bit myself when I try to put together my own work without an editor, and is the fact that there's many standout strong images, but there isn't that one that they lead with that's like so shocking. I mean, obviously the top image is just shocking with the garbage and everything. But the fact that like this is just, you kind of have to. This is something that's like the difference between a good photo essay and like a listicle or something like that. I think most photo essays are basically the equivalent of a BuzzFeed listicle. It's like, here's all the hot points. Like, here's all the hot photos I took. I'm guilty of that. I'm not accusing anyone of doing it, but I just think that now that's to be like, oh, I got 12 really hot, cool images from this one event, this one story. Here's the 12 images, and we're calling that a photo essay, not just here's some photos from this event sort of thing. But this really tells a story throughout the photos. You don't even, and in fact, like, I'd recommend looking at the photos first, maybe checking, briefly looking at the comments before you read even the text in the middle there, which, just because the images, I think, strike so well, the pure, I'm pretty sure I've seen a documentary or I've read something a lot longer about this place before, and it is just pure unadulterated freaking misery as far as I can tell. Between there's only two places of water you're able to get something pertaining quite clean water, which is either melting the glaciers, which isn't a safe thing to do, as anyone with children should tell their children, do not eat the snow because you don't know what the hell's in it, and without purifying it, or rain, coming in rain. And so in a settlement this large that is using mercury and using, horrible, the old ways that they used to mine gold, that just gets up in the air, and it's everywhere. And so, I mean, most of the people that work these places probably are going to have very, very short lives. At least, if they have long lives, it's not going to be pleasurable ones. But I think that the most striking image of standing alone, is the effigy image. It's about halfway down the page, because it certainly grabbed the hell me out like quick. And you see the shanty towns or whatever that you see here, which, I mean, can't be in the weather that they're in. Like, you see those sort of houses in favelas in Brazil, or Latin America, and it's whatever. It doesn't get that cold there. It's a heat problem, an air problem. But like this is the mountains in Peru. It must be at least getting to the deep negative temperatures. And but the title, the caption is, an effigy hangs from a pole as a warning to criminals. Mob justice and these kinds of warnings are common in communities in Peru and Bolivia. A reported 10 police officers keep the peace here, which is oh my God. I mean, especially with large quantities,
50,000 people, 10
and just wow. and old everywhere. So like somebody has got a big chunk of gold or what. I mean, it sounds like the most, like, the worst possible scenario for the gold rush of 49 and things like that. It'd be like if everybody moved there, like, oh my God. But still, I mean, there's like and then there's like a hand. It's interesting what he did with the images that should be beautiful. Like the bottom photo of the glacier, and he kept it dark, and the fact that it's like overcast and everything like that, and during the weather,
contaminated. It's like you talk about the dangers of these people. I mean, like you said, the people downstream, the people in the villages down who would have nothing to do with this are affected by it because they're contaminating their water supply, which is glacier runoff and stuff like that. I have to assume that part of it is that's their. And it's just it's so despicable how it's like we talk about the gold rush, right? And like the gold rush, at least in America, has sort of a mystique about it, right? Like we think of it lovingly, there are movies made about it, and it's like, but this is like the gold rush in like the complete opposite spectrum, in terms of just destroying the environment in this harsh, horrible place. We think like, oh, prospectors and people, panning for gold in the river streams. Like it's all romanticized.
Yeah, we got terrible reality TV shows about it. There's like 4 of them, isn't there now? Like all based in Alaska. Yeah, there was at least 2 of them I know. And by the way, all those people, they live like just outside of town. Like, oh, really? No, I actually know personally, like one of them, they live right outside of this cute little village called Homer, Alaska, which I would love. I would move there in a second. It's such a nice town. But they live like 10 miles in. They're like they just drive their sedan or whatever. So I think they got a truck, but like it's hilarious because it's so fake. But it's also ends up being dangerous because people think they can do it. Every once in a while, you know, as living in Alaska, you'd hear some story about some idiot trying to do what the guy from oh my God, what's that terrible book or the terrible movie? Actually, the book is actually decent. The kid that Chris McAndress, he wandered out into the forest and died, and people will go out and try to find the bus that he famously, you know, died in because he ate wrong berries or something. I forget what it was. Yeah. But like every once in a while, the Coast Guard or some, you know, police department or whatever troopers have to go out and take a helicopter and save some idiot who tried to, you know, go out in the middle of nowhere. Anyway, this is way off topic, but yeah, this is, I also, I mean, just down to the layout, the fact that this is one thing that really bothers me about the internet is that so much of it is obsessed with a white background, which isn't, these photos would look, terrible, if it was a white background. And so that's why like New York Times the lens that sadly it's going or it's gone. They used to have everything either a very dark gray or a black background because it looks better. And that's one thing that's like, it kills me. BuzzFeed does some really great photo essays because they have a good photo editor, and I think Vox does too. And they always use a white background, and it kills me anyway. But
I don't know if this background is 18% gray, but it's definitely a gray, and it's I think it complements the photo as well. And
I think
I'm curious. I'm curious if this is not like, I haven't seen any other photo essays from the Washington Post, so I may not know for sure, but if this gray is pervasive amongst all of their photo essays, or if they chose this color for this photo series.
If you click, they have a thing like the Lens blog. It's called Insight. If you click on the right there, it'll bring you over to it, and everything has the gray background, which I like.
Yeah, well, it's a great color and it works really well. And the photograph that I think sticks out most to me, you know, trying not to be like, again, I think the first image is beautiful and it represents the entire story very well in one shot. You know, like you said, the trash and the miners and the town. It's like, that's the perfect opening shot. But I don't want to harp on that one because, again, it is the first one. But I think the photograph that beside that one that sticks out most to me is just this one shot of the kids playing on the soccer field. I think this says a lot about this town. One, that this town has been here long enough for them to set up a soccer field. Two, you see it like pristine soccer field surrounded by trash on all sides. So it just shows how pervasive this trash problem is and just how these people live. And three, it's just like people trying to make, I guess, a regular life in this area that is, I think, 17,000 feet up. It snows 12 months out of the year. And it's just like, you know, it's crazy to me that this country would allow this establishment to exist, you know, and to exist for so long and to not like clamp down on it and just rip it apart, you know, and I don't know why they don't.
First off, there's a basketball hoop above the soccer thing, which is interesting to me.
Beautiful. But and no grass, it's artificial turf, obviously, because grass doesn't grow that high.
It's interesting. It's because I mean, it also would be this story could also easily double as a story about plastics, which you know more and more. I've seen a couple of great essays about them now, and it's just, you know, the fact that in this remote area where no one should be living. That, you know, that's what it is. The Mount Everest trash issue. It reminds me so much of that, obviously, because of the visuals, you know, mountain sides and things like that. But like the issues that wherever you're going to have humans now, you're going to have a plastics issue. And, you know, in this side of the mountain, like, you know, I mean, like West Virginia and other places, you know, historically, it's going to be, it's just a combo of being able to have modern technology to a certain level. And being able to do this so much more efficiently than, you know, back in the day when West Virginia would, you know, you'd have random miners on the side of a mountain pulling out whatever. It's.
Back in the day, by the way, little known fact, was a Wednesday. Just people don't know that. Anyways, let's wrap up this week's show. Zach, is there anything else you'd like to throw at us before we sign off?
I'm going to hopefully tomorrow I'm going to have a story up on nationofchange.org. and about me following around a bunch of white nationalist adjacent guys running around Washington, D.C., and how the Washington, D.C. Police Department basically gave them their own little escorts around town and, gave them fist bumps and bear hugs and things like that. And so it's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. Fun.
We'll look out for that. And hopefully we'll be back to our normally scheduled live streams and whatnot here in probably about 2 weeks or so. Fingers crossed. And I did want to thank our guest, Mark Doyle, for taking time out to be on the show this week. I'm sorry that we lost his transmission halfway through the show. Would have loved to have gotten your opinion on a couple of these matters, Mark, but that's just another excuse to have you back on to talk further about, your work. And of course, hopefully look out for me and Zach and Ron at some point in the future on Mark's podcast. We'll see whenever that happens to be.
He does have, he is in the wilds of Brooklyn.
Oh my gosh,
so
someday they'll have high speed, consistent internet out there. I mean, it's like a war zone out there. No. Anyways, hopefully we get you back on again in the future, Mark. But I don't have anything else except for go to aroundthelens.com, throw us a few pennies on Patreon to keep the show going and the lights on, help support independent visual journalism discussion. Anyways, that's it. Thank you so much, Zach, for being on the show and being my great co-host, and glad to have you back on here and talk about all the cool things you're doing. Anyways, for Zach Roberts, I am David J. Murphy. This has been Around the Lens, episode 182, and we are out! Thanks for tuning into Around the Lens. We hope you enjoyed the show, and hope you'll join us next week. In the meantime, go to AroundTheLens.com for show notes from tonight's episode, as well as links to our Patreon, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages. We're also always looking for new and exciting guests to feature on each show, so if you know somebody who might be interested, let them know.